So I'm thinking on life, and I'm wondering if life is significant or not. Is life important, or is it as common as muck and doesn't amount to much? I'm trying to understand the position of life in the universe, the status. And when I'm thinking about life, it seems that there are obviously very large variety of life. There's lots of different ways that life manifests in the world. And we as humans regard other forms of life as relatively insignificant. They're not important in the same way as humanity. So we're happy to dispose of insects and vermin, we describe it as, and other forms of life don't seem to be very important. So life itself isn't the issue, it's human life that's significant. So I'm wondering what life is and how we decide what life is important and what life isn't. So I can kill an insect and it's not a problem, no one's interested. I can kill vermin, rats and mice, and that's not a problem either. I believe I can kill rabbits and foxes without there being an issue. But it begins to get more significant when the complexity of the life increases. So deer and foxes maybe, and cows, pigs, goats, sheep, all of these creatures are more significant. But we still kill and eat sheep and pigs and cows and whatever. So it seems to be more about ownership rather than the value of the life itself. But it does seem to be the case that the complexity of the life increases its importance. So again, it's not the life itself that's important, but the complexity of that life. And then we get the cats and dogs, which we don't kill as we kill sheep and cows and whatever. So we've decided to not treat them as animals in the same way. We decided to assign importance to cats and dogs. So I do have to wonder how we make this decision. Why have we decided that cats and dogs are not the same as rabbits and foxes? It really is hard to understand how we made that distinction. So I'm wondering if life is significant in the world, or is life no more significant than any other kind of attribute that the universe has? So is life no more significant than rocks, or water, or oxygen? Are we just a thing in the same way that there are lots of other things in the universe? And I'm wondering about the complexity of humanity. Where do we fit on the scale of complexity? As things stand on Earth at present, humanity is at the top of the tree. We are the most important creatures on the planet. And that's why we dispose of other animals without much of a problem. We kill and raise animals, confine them. We are pretty horrible to animals and creatures when it comes down to it. But we don't have a problem doing that because we think we are the top dogs. But then, of course, it raises the question that if there are other forms of life that are more advanced than us, would they regard us in the same way? Would we be regarded as a cow to another form of life? Could we be disposed of or harvested and confined as we do sheep or cows or pigs? So I am wondering where humanity fits on the scale of things, on the scale of complexity and importance. It is very strange to try and imagine an entity more advanced than us, animals that are more advanced than us. And the universe is supposedly infinite. I still can't get to grips with that concept. But so there are assuredly many forms of life, possibly infinite forms of life out there in the universe. So I am wondering where humanity fits in the scheme of things. How do we compare the other forms of life to the other forms of life that are definitely out there? This is not even a possibility or maybe or whatever. Unless we take the view that humanity is somehow special, it seems to me fairly obvious that there are other forms of life out there. Whether we will encounter them is of course another question. But I think it is very strange and momentous, in fact, to know with essentially certainty that there are other forms of life out there in an infinite universe. I don't take the view that humanity is in some way special and we're the only sentient creatures out there. It is so strange, it's so amazing basically to know that there are other forms of life out there as complex as us, and indeed more complex than us. And that's just phenomenal. To try and conceive of how humanity, for example, how might we be developed? I mean, if we think of how we were 1,000 years ago, in the year 1000, whatever, we would have been extremely basic. I don't know the details, I haven't thought on it, but I'm guessing we'd be in caves or whatever. So where will we be in 1,000 years' time? In the year 3000, what will humanity be like? If we haven't blown ourselves up, it really is difficult to imagine how we might develop, where we might be living, what we'll be eating, etc. What will our biology be like? Our knowledge would be so immense that it is awesome to try and imagine what we will achieve in the world, how we will live, how we'll feed ourselves and clothe ourselves, how we'll raise our children. And I'm wondering about life, and it does seem kind of pointless, and it's just a thing. And we do assign human life much greater importance than we do any other kind of life. So life itself doesn't seem to be what's significant. It's the complexity of that life that seems to matter. This is why I suppose I can kill a bee or an ant without any issue. But if I kill a dog, that becomes an issue because the dog is more significant. If I kill a sheep or a cow, if I was a farmer, it's not an issue. But I think I mentioned already dogs or cats. For some reason, some forms of life are given significance. But I am wondering where humanity fits in the scheme of things in terms of importance and complexity. So there are definitely other forms of life out there. So I am wondering how developed might they be? Where do we fit on the scale of development and importance? Humanity is complex to a certain degree, and as I said before, I think how we were 1,000 years is very different to how we are now. So whatever forms of life are out there that we might encounter one day, they might be the same development as us, or 1,000 years ahead, or 10,000 years ahead, or 100,000 years ahead, or 1,000,000 years. It's simply amazing to try and conceive of the kind of humanities there are out there. It is absolutely stupendous. And we're bound to meet another species one day. And as I say, that development could be awesome. There could be millions of years ahead of us in development. Can you imagine what that would be like? 1,000,000 years more advanced than us. It's absolutely awesome. I can't even begin to imagine what humanity will be like in 1,000,000 years. It's just impossible, I would say, to conceive intelligently of how we might develop. So the question is, of course, will we blow ourselves up? But if we don't, and we continue to develop and evolve over millennia, it's just mind-blowing. It's just too much to understand. But I suppose it will happen. We will just develop, and if we don't destroy ourselves, we will become ever more complex. But there are so many other entities out there that must be much more advanced than us. And it really is mind-blowing.